Let me introduce again a man who should need no introduction. If you are in the property restoration industry, I strongly recommend that article is available from Pete Consigli. I mentioned it in my own article with Ed Cross doing an overview of the history, but the 4 Faces on Mount Restoration, Taking the Best of the Past to Build for the Future by Pete Consigli. So these are names you should know. I think it's important to understand the history of where we've come from. Also, I do try IAQ Radio, again, the OGs. They've been doing podcasts before podcast was even a thing, live radio. They still do live every Friday. Episode 473, which is a replay of episode 177. They titled that one From Humble Beginning to Raging Success, a Candid Conversation with the Dri Eaz Products Founders. So if you have dehues and air movers, you probably know the Dri Eaz name, but Claude Blackburn. So they go into greater depth about his coming up in the industry. Really good. It's a great interview with Claude. Like, Claude took Dri Eaz from, those of you that know those little foam squares that you put under furniture after carpet cleaning, he's selling those for $27 a piece, and shipping those all over the place, and from his house, and then when he sold Dri Eaz in 2006, it had almost 200 employees, 150 distributors, and sales of over 50 million. So Claude knows. What's the farmer's statement? We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. He talked about in that interview on IAQ, the 51% rule is like, as long as I was right 51% of the time, we could stay alive. So I was really excited to, Claude's from my neck of the woods in the Northwest. And so this is a great, I enjoyed this conversation immensely that Claude would come on and share his insights with us. So let's get after it. Well, and I think you mentioned in there, you went to a seminar from Lloyd Weaver, saw his Porta Dryer. I think it was when Lloyd came out to the Northwest, right? He's definitely somebody that pops up in history. Do you remember much about the seminar and Lloyd's process?
Yeah, not very much. I mean, Lloyd, I could relate to Lloyd because he's blue collar.
Yeah.
He was just your average Joe. He was rough around the edges. He was rough all the way through. And he charged, and I'd been going to a lot of seminars because I didn't have much education. I'd sign up for these $59. At that time, there was a dozen companies where you could go to these one-day seminars on every subject you could imagine. So I took those all in, $59, so I'm going, and so I took all those seminars, and Lloyd was charging $250.
Wow.
Back in 1975 or something, 4 or 5 in that range. And I went to a seminar. It was basically just stood up there and talked to everybody. And he made jokes. He was a down to earth kind of guy. And I bought a couple of air movers from him and a sensor. I think he had a sensor at that time. And I started doing water damage restoration. And
you put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
How the carpet cleaning business adapts into water damage to some.
Well, it was perfect because it was carpet cleaners really suffered in those days, and so a lot of them would go out of business in the wintertime because it was kind of like the housewife believed in spring cleaning and fall cleaning.
Yeah,
and that was serious business to them. I mean, the whole house would get cleaned, in the spring and the fall. Well, I was a residential carpet cleaner, and thousands of other carpet cleaners in this burgeoning industry were also residential carpet cleaners. So they did pretty good in the spring and through the summer and into the fall. But once it started to rain or get really cold or the Christmas trees went up or whatever, that was the end of carpet cleaning.
Yeah.
So these guys were going out of business. I once bought a list back in the, I think it was 24,000 SIC code 7217 carpet cleaners. And I made a serious mistake. I put return postage guaranteed. And it cost you 25 cents to get them back. It was crazy. Well, I got about 20% of these mailings back. And that's when whether I made up the story or not, some of them were just a bad list. Now I realize now that some of them were just duplicates or bad lists or whatever. But in my own mind at that time, I said 20% of our industry is going out of business every year.
Yeah.
And well, what can we do about this? And water damage helped me. And within a few years, it became 50% of my net income. Yeah. So almost all residential. And so it wasn't 50% of my gross sales, but I made so much more money on water damage.
Right.
So
being able to set the equipment and have it make money while you're doing other things, right?
Yeah, it was even then it was $12 a day for an air mover, something like that back in 1975. Yeah. So, but Lloyd, I don't really remember too much. I mean, I could tell you a few stories about Lloyd because once I got into the business, he was very aggressive. I mean, one time he was going to beat me up.
Well, you eventually became his competition, basically, right?
Yeah, I mean, a few years later, but really, I bought a couple of pieces of equipment, went to a seminar, and I never had any dealings with Lloyd after that. I mean, he wasn't like a mentor or a person I talked with, I mean, I would see him at the trade shows because I was attending the Carpet Cleaners Institute of the Northwest at that time. Yeah. You know, I'd see him around, but I never was really, he wasn't my buddy or anything.
Yeah. So you guys ever put the boxing gloves on and do that at an industry show?
Stop it! No! Come on! Michael! Open your mouth! No, Michael!
Yeah, well, in Vancouver, Washington, we had a Carpet Cleaners Institute meeting up there. And in those days, those were pretty serious. I mean, we might have, 100, 150 companies come to something like that. We'd have big exhibits. For me as a greenhorn, it was a huge thing, and but I had brought out my first air mover. So that was, and he came over to me. He was so pissed. So he had a bit of a temper. He was so pissed. He says, "You copied my color." And I'm going, "Copied your color? What? You got it?" And he grabs me by sort of shaking me like I'm kind of a nonviolent person. And it was a good thing he did because it made me mad is what it did. It made me embarrassed. It was in front of everybody, Yeah. And I didn't copy his color intentionally. I just they only had 8 colors of Imron paint. And I was using a super quality 2-part paint back in those days. It was the most expensive paint that money could buy. And my metal, I was making metal dryers. Yep. And so they only had 8 colors. They had a light blue and a dark blue. I picked one of them. But anyway, he made me mad enough, and I was young enough. That was a mistake on his part because I was going to get even. I was going to show him what's what. And of course, I would have never been able to show him what's what with a metal air mover. I made 10 units the first year. And I'd been selling easy blocks since the late 70s out of my garage. And then you say, well, what else can I do? I mean, somebody's going to knock off my blocks pretty soon. I gotta have something else. And I wrote the Carpet Cleaner's Guide to Water Damage Restoration, which I actually have a revised version, but this is the first book I wrote.
That's one of the original copies?
Yeah. Well, this is a slightly revised version.
Sure.
But and since then, Dri Eaz, of course, has done lots of things.
Wow.
But we wrote the restorative guide to the book of restorative drying, which is 470 pages, which was huge. I spent a whole year on that project. Where was I going with this? I forgot where I was.
Your metal dryers. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So what else can we sell besides easy blocks? And then just I sent a mailing off to every carpet cleaner in the United States with my easy blocks on one side of the order form and the book on the other side. And then the next, so I sold thousands of those books. Huh. I mean, thousands of them. And a lot of people would give me credit for getting them into the business because of the book. I mean, they would come to my seminars later, they would buy our equipment, they would do all this other stuff. But I got a lot of, and I didn't know it. I didn't know I was kind of this guy, that everybody looked up to. But that helped a lot of people make money. But anyway, the next time I did a mailing, because these mailings were very expensive, because I was doing like a 24,000 mailing at that time. And that's how you reach people. It was the only way to reach people, right? Way of magazine advertising or direct mail. And so what else do we know anything about? The only thing I know anything about is water damage restoration. And I made a run of 10 metal air movers. And they weren't copies of Lloyd's. They were a little different. And I tried to make them better. Of course, you try to improve. And I sent off the 24,000 mailing and sold like 4 of them. It's like,
Man, you are one pathetic loser. No offense.
in other words,
popular item, huh? Yeah.
it was a total bust.
Yeah.
And when Lloyd actually shook me up like that, I was going to give it up.
Huh.
I figured I had no chance. They were buying Lloyd's Porta Dryers and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, why would they buy something from me? I mean, they love my blocks. I mean, I was opening the mailbox and getting
What were his original Porta Dryers like? Like the snail fan that we know today, or
No. They were metal. So you go to WWA Grangers, you buy a HVAC blower, quarter horse, third horse, half horse, whatever. And that comes with a wheel. So it comes with a 9.5, 10 5/8, blah, blah, blah. And so he had, and then you go to a sheet metal shop and you have them make the outside. And of course it's rectangular because it's sheet metal.
Yep.
So it has straight lines. Now we came out with the first snail-shaped, it was fiberglass, hand-laid fiberglass dryer in the world. And that came by accident, like soon after that incident with Lloyd. That came fairly soon after that, within 6 months. Because I kind of decided, look, if I'm going to spend, whatever it was I spent, say 30 cents a mailing, thousands of dollars, which was like my whole net worth doing mailings, then and I only sell 4 of these.
Yeah.
That's a bust,
So you were ready to call it quits and just
I was done.
And
then, and even that wouldn't have done it because I didn't have a better idea. And but the better idea came in the form of a fiberglass, hand-laid fiberglass mold. And I have to give credit to somebody else for that. A guy walked in, he was an old guy, he's like 40, and we started talking, and he wanted a job carpet cleaning. And what he was an alcoholic. He'd hit bottom, he quit drinking, but nobody would give him a job.
Yeah.
And so he was just looking for any kind of work to take care of his family. And his name was Harlan Wright. And I'm like looking at this old guy, and he's overweight, and everything.
Yeah.
And I'm going, I don't
the prototype, right?
I don't think he can clean carpets. And on the way out, he looked at one of my dryers. I had it sitting in my little carpet cleaning business, and metal dryer. And he said, "What's that?" I said, "Blah, blah, blah. And this is how it works. And it goes underneath the carpet, does this and that." And he says, I can make a tool and make that out of fiberglass. And I said, you could? And so we worked together, but he did the real work. But I knew the industry and I knew how.
Yeah.
And we came out with the first fiberglass plastic air mover in the world at that time. That would have been, I don't know what year it was, but it was, 80, 82,
80s.
83 or in that area. But one thing that really sticks out in my mind when we were negotiating, he said, I said, well, how much do you think you're worth to get paid doing this? And he says $10 an hour. And I still remember looking at him and going, well, that's what I get paid. Because I would pay myself, like a regular business, And so I paid him $10 an hour, and he made the first fiberglass mold. He made the second fiberglass mold.
Wow.
One time we were one of the biggest laminators in Skagit County.
Oh, dang.
Do you know who I am?
No, I can't say that I do.
I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal.
Oh, we did tons of this stuff.
Yeah.
And it was terrible. We got an order from U-Haul Corporation for 2,200. So we got into the rental industry too.
Okay.
And we tried to merge the carpet cleaning industry that didn't have enough air movers with the rental industry, who had, they were good business people. They had money, they could buy stuff. And we merged those two industries together. And we got an order from U-Haul Corporation for 2,200 units.
Holy cow.
And these units took 4 man hours each to build. They were hand built with little rollers, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, it was crazy. And when we were going through that, I'm going, we can't keep doing this. And soon after, we were able to buy our first rotational molding machine.
Wow.
Plastic, rotational molding machine. So we had to redesign, basically.
So U-Haul used to rent drying equipment and tools and things?
Oh, yeah, they got in this, and they spent, I couldn't quote the numbers, hundreds of millions, 500 million, $800 million dollars, and they opened up branches. Well, they bought 2,200 units, for example, because they wanted 2 turbo dryers in each store.
Wow.
So they had 1,100 outlets that they either had opened or were opening. And they bought stuff. They never even saw my product. I never met them. Wow. I got a phone call saying how much. I didn't know how much. I got $179 each. And the next thing I know, I got a purchase order for 22. The biggest order I'd ever gotten in my life was like for 10.
Yeah.
You know, the biggest single order.
Yeah.
I mean, I had lots of guys that were buying 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, that kind of thing, you know. And they buy 1 and come back 6 months later and buy 2 more, and then they come back 6 months later and buy 6.
Yeah.
But you know, those guys that bought 1 ended up with 100 units, you know, down the road. But anyway, so that was a big order. And that was all fiberglass. And then we got into road.
Well, it's funny you mentioned you were one of the largest laminators. I remember reading Lloyd Weaver. He's in the Dakotas, right?
Yeah,
he
South
was
Dakota.
At one point the state's largest exporter, you know, with their Porta Dryers and whatnot. So,
oh, is that right?
And then I think his son innovated robots that go into like the HVAC systems and those kinds of things. So
yeah, I met his son. In fact, I asked son to sit on the water damage standard, the S500, I think. And I think he even came out to Skagit County because we had one of those meetings right out in Mount Vernon.
I don't know how you could not be encouraged hearing his story, you know, of just struggling and finding a way to make it happen in the early days. I mean, we all see the giant that Dri Eaz is now, and I believe it's a part of the Legends brand now, but because Claude sold in 2006, I think I said in the opening. So, but just, you know, you always see the end story, you know, the success, and it's cool to hear some of those in between stories, and also, you know, what Claude's doing in retirement, you know, to try to, like he said, make his money do good things. And so just a real encouraging story. And a fun interview for me. As I said, I've been trying to make more of a focus on the history. I really want to encourage modern restorers. If you're new to the industry, look up some of these names. You know, got opportunities. The Restoration Industry Association is having their 75th, I believe. So that's going to be June in Florida. It's Kissimmee, which is like outside of Orlando or whatever. And so, you know, that's going to be a great opportunity. Ken Larson mentioned that on the last podcast, you know, great opportunity to meet some of the still living industry legends, the guys that took it from, you know, carpet cleaning and construction and developed the industry into, you know, what it is. And like Ken said on last podcast about, you know, still trying to, you know, mold it into what it should be. And so, you know, Claude's huge in that Dri Eaz has made an indelible impression, but also, you know, Pete Consigli in that Founding Fathers article brought up, so that's the Founding Fathers article from 2007, C&R Magazine, which is a magazine of Restoration Industry Association, but you can find that online. I'll link to it in the show notes, but his company mastered the skill of selling by providing low-cost seminars, and Claude was sometimes mocked for pricing his seminars under $100. I believe whether it was in this article or another, you know, at the time they were like $250 a pop. So, but he knew exactly what he was doing. He consistently played to packed rooms, while the attendees of other seminars dropped off. Under Claude's innovative pioneering, Dri Eaz pushed the envelope in the decades of the 80s and the 90s, and so. I believe Claude mentioned that in our talk, like, you know, it's one thing to have the technology and, you know, some of those early as they're formulating, you know, pre-S500 from the IICRC and those kinds of things. You know, your trainers were writing their own manuals, and then like Ken talks about, you know, coming to a consensus and whether that's always the best thing. it's a work in progress, right? So just interesting stuff.
Hey guys, massive legend here.
I'm looking to do a virtual book signing with the authors of Be Intentional Culture. So we're shooting for Saturday, February 20th at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So all of this you can see on the website, thedyojo.com/listen is the podcast website. So at the DYOJO podcast.
Beneath a man, we find his nucleus.